Hello and welcome to this episode of Pause with Nandini. Today it gives me great pleasure to introduce the reserved compartment on the show. I wanted to also say that I am joining from Mianjin, Brisbane, the unceded lands of the Yagera and Turrbal people. This is and always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. With that, welcome to the show, Daniel, Alina, Gautam, and Dr. Abhijit. I want to tell you a little bit about the Reserved Compartment. It is a pioneering community-driven initiative to amplify Dalit, Ambedkarite, gender-inclusive voices through spoken word, poetry, storytelling, music, and performance. By reclaiming the term reserved compartment, which historically refers to segregation, representation, they have created a platform for subaltern narratives to challenge caste, gender, and other intersecting oppressions. Rooted in the legacy of the Bhakti movement, the Ambedkarite jalsa-shahiri tradition, and the Dalit Panthers, they aim to move beyond tokenism, ensuring the art and lived experiences of marginalized artists are honored with dignity. And I think dignity is just really important word, and I would love to explore that a little bit more in terms of individual journeys, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'd like to introduce very quickly the four members of the reserve compartment, the pioneering members that we have here. We have four here, but there are five. Abhijit is telling me that there are five. Well, I will introduce him as well, even though he couldn't join us today. So we have Alina, who is a poet, writer, and Dalit feminist thinker. I have to say she has the most interesting Instagram account. So please do follow her, because I have been following her for a while, and I think there's just so much straight talk and we need a lot of that. So I really appreciate her. She's from Kerala, and her work explores themes of gender, sexuality, religion, and caste politics. I'll let her talk a little bit more, but I'll do a quick introduction so we can get right into the conversation. Gautam Vegda hails from Gujarat. Gautam, you can say hi. And
Hi.
he is an anti-caste poet, illustrator, and research scholar from Gujarat. Gautam was in the news all of last year for not the most savory reasons, for having a run-in with a publishing house, and we'll get to that as well in a minute. But it's wonderful to see Gautam really traveling with his poetry, both geographically and also in the exploration that he's been doing. So I'd love to speak a little bit more to Gautam in a bit. We have Daniel here, who I believe is also in the middle of cooking up a storm today. So we appreciate him joining us. That's a little bit distracting because now I want to know what he's cooking and what's for lunch. But I will get to introducing him first. He's a spoken word poet, stage artist from Bangalore. His poetry aims at initiating conversations around mental health, politics, and caste oppression. He has helped over 100 students finding the poet within, which I think is quite cool. And finally, we have Dr. Abhijit, uh, who is a pathologist, assistant professor at JJ Hospital. He is an Ambedkarite Buddhist poet and a writer exploring societal dynamics. Abhijit and I have been friends for the longest time, and I've followed the journey of poetry, of his interests and his concerns over various societal issues, of course, issues of caste and gender and identity. But I'm really, interested in exploring all of that with you. So thank you all for joining me today. Let me begin with Alina. Alina, I want to talk to you about intersections and departures. I know all of you have come to this place with the reserve compartment from your own. So if you could tell us a little bit about your journey in this space and what brought you to the reserve compartment.
So I've been very fond of poetry even from a very young age. I wrote my first poem when I was 8 years old. So I was very much intrigued by this world of literature and all. And so I think we all operate within this world with a sense of merit, as in a sense of fairness and justice, that if you do something good, you'll be rewarded. If you put in effort, if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. But sooner I understood and I realized that this justice system in this India is very much distorted, that how much effort you put, it doesn't necessarily translate into good results or good outcomes for you or good opportunities for you. So I've been thinking about this thing a lot, because there is this other group who accuse us of not putting effort and reaping all the rewards. But it is the other way. We are the ones who actually believe in this merit and believe in this hard work and all this stuff. And we are the ones who are not getting the proportionate outcomes. So reserve compartment became a space. This idea of the reserve compartment, when I spoke to Abhijit first, it felt like a space where I can reclaim my own story and assert power, my own thoughts. So it it felt like a space where I can express myself freely without thinking about offending anyone or something like that. And this has become a space where I can be myself more creatively and personally and all that stuff. And as the idea, it is a reclamation of spaces, and it's a reclamation of our own creativity without depending other people to somehow give space to us or pass the mic to us. It's we are taking the mic ourselves. So yeah, so that is my experience and journey within Reserved Compartment.
I really love that. And I think this, this assertion was a long time coming. And this whole idea of giving the space and sharing the space and giving the mic, I mean, I think that idea has done its time. And it's really great that the reserve compartment is just coming out with something that's quite revolutionary, actually, in the space that there exists. Gautam, I'll come to you next. You've had a very intimate experience with this, someone thinking they're giving you space, right? By giving you the bare minimum and withholding respect, which I think is really the bottom, expectation of any artist, actually, whether you're dealing with a big publication or a small one. And without going into too much detail, I'd leave that to you if you'd like to talk a little bit about that experience. But if you could plot your journey as a poet in this space and even outside of it, what do you make of your journey and what brought you to the reserve compartment?
First of all, thank you so much for having me over. If I start from the beginning, I was born in an area which is called in Gujarat as salty land, right? So it's a desert kind of area, and the biggest idea is that I have seen my mother as my role model, and she never, there is this upward dynamics. So when you try to reclaim spaces, when you try to reclaim spaces. So first of all, when my mother, I have seen when I was 5 or 4, I have seen my mother dragging that cattle in the village as a caste profession. But slowly she said that I will not do it, and she seek like she tried to seek for some better with some better profession with dignity. So she tried to work in the field, and she said that some masonry work she will do, and she started to do some masonry work. And then she said that no, I want to do something called no this sewing machine with that. So she wanted to do that. So I said, okay. So then again, so this is now the OBC profession, right? So she's going upward from what caste profession she was inflicted upon, and she started to do that. So after that, so this was the biggest and traumatized experience that I would want to share. That then she thought that she would want to open a shop in the village. That in the history of my village, no, never did a Dalit did Dalit do before. So for the first time, she opened up a shop just in front of the Ram temple. We were not even allowed to go through and enter the temple and go through that path. She opened up a shop, and the next day there were the rallies and the people like abusing and saying that why did you open? How dare you do it? And my father was a little tensed, and he was afraid, and he said that okay, if the entire village is opposing us, so we should give up. And she said, why should we, right? So my father was little upset and was not so keen on continuing the business, but she was said that jo karna ho kar lo, right? I'm here, it will be like that. So she kept it on, and just in the Ram temple. So when in the Ram temple, people do the the parayana, and people read it every day, some chapters. So somebody put on the bookmark, somebody put a cheat saying that these people have come to the village, they have just entered the village now. Tomorrow they will enter the house, and what if they will enter the temple tomorrow, right? So this entire idea of pollution, idea of the caste stigma, and then to force somebody, right, through the protest or some sort of caste hubris is so much that they forced my mother to shop or like close the shop, but she didn't do it. And then the next year, she contested in the village election, and she became the one of the members of that particular the village politics. So if see the upward mobility, what she was no she was doing before at first, the dragging the dead cattle to get into the business, and then to get into something called the politics, the active village politics, where she was the part of the decision making. And she was not so literate. She just studied for 6 months, and then she could not continue. Just 6 months in her life, but within those 6 months, she could learn how to read and write something like some letters. So whenever the village some assistant come for the sign, so most of the people in village, they just put the thumb impression. Somebody like her name is Punji Ben, so Punji asset, so she will write Punji Ben. That assertion. So I could grow up seeing my mother reclaiming spaces in politics, in the business, and wherever. And even now, she's around 60, and she's still showing and things like that. So that's what is something that gives me courage to, and that's why I would also, I think I'm not that courageous, but still I draw some inspiration from her to reclaim spaces and assert voices that I do have.
Gosh, that is an incredible story. We speak about heroes like in the past, and we think about them almost as mythical creatures, but your mother is like a real hero of this time. And the courage it must take to have like the whole village standing against her, and for her to say, whatever, do whatever you want. I'm going to be here.
Yes.
I think that is so incredible, and thank you for sharing that story. I know that you write poetry that is quite different, actually, and it's like futuristic and science fiction and all of that. We'll come to that in a minute, but I did want to speak with Daniel next. So, Daniel, if we could have you back from your, there
I'm
you
here,
are.
I'm here, I'm here, I'm here.
Okay. Now you've been part of the poetry circle for a while, right? And you've got your own sort of following, and you've got a claim as a poet, and you've seen how the space also operates. Not just the poetry space, perhaps, but the cultural space. What are your thoughts on that? And in a way, a lot of people believe that it's becoming far more equal and there is equal opportunity. And who's stopping you if you want to participate? But the ground reality can be quite different, because the gatekeeping of elitism, or the gatekeeping of social capital, and the circles, and who gets invited, who doesn't get invited. Just want your perspective on that, and how that perhaps led you to be a part of the reserve compartment?
So thank you for having me here, first of all. Me and Abhijit, we have been talking for years together. We haven't officially met. We have only been talking through WhatsApp, Instagram, and stuff. So whenever we talk, because we have been an active part of the poetry group and circles and everything else, uh, our thought process kind of matches the same thing, and we notice the same thing, which was very important. It was not like we talk about the same thing, it's just that we notice the same thing and then we reaffirm that this is happening. Because when it's just happening to you in an isolated place, you think that it's just happening to you. But if somebody else also feels the same way, then it is affirmed that it is not just you who's feeling that, who's not just you who's making that up, right? So, which is very important because look at all the major poetry groups in India right now with a big YouTube channel, with a big following. How many of them look like me? How many of them are platformed artists that look, when I say look like me, I'm not just talking about the physical appearance, that too, but also the invisible caste identities, class identities, where I come from. How many of us have given a stage there where we have literally helped many of these organizations build from the root up, right? Uh, uh, they go to a certain stage and then they'll just discard us. And then they'll want basically people who can pass a screen test for TV, no? Like all these correct beauty standards, they know should look in a certain way, their skin color should look a certain way. And that was a wake up moment for me when I realized that this is not what poetry should be about. This is not what representation or art should be about. And a greater inspiration for me was how button poetry operated. I don't know how it is operated now, but button poetry in the US, they have people from different art groups. They have different geographical locations. They are not bound by one skin color, one body type, or anything, which is very interesting to me, which I don't see in India. Because if you want to make it work in a social media world where the reels is the most important thing, you'll have to make them look a certain aesthetic that matches with them. So TRC became very important to me because we were gaslit into thinking that those poems were the best poems, and everybody went hooray over these poems when I was thinking, is okay, but it's not that great, you know. And this is like listening to a Taylor Swift song and thinking that oh, it's beautiful. Everybody around likes it, and you are the only person who doesn't like it and is scratching your head. And then you meet a bunch of people who say, hey, no, this song is bad. This is just a billionaire who's using AI to make songs. And then you realize, then you realize this is what has been happening to us. It is just that there is a certain standard of beauty that is set, and these people are put on stage and given a mic, and everything that comes out of a mic in is accepted as the aesthetic of the as the dominant art form, which wasn't the case. I always say that there were spoken word poets in India even before spoken word poetry came into the picture. There were two kinds of poets. One poet who always performed in the king's castle. He'll walk into the palace and he'll give a oratory speech about the praises of the king, and he would get some gold coins or something. There was another poet who was always in the street. He will always mock what the king is doing. He'll always mock, look at this policy, look at all the poor people. He will always talk about it. There's always been two kinds of poets. And the king's poets have always been famous because they get fed, they get money, they get recognition. The poet in the street will never do that. The idea is not to become famous with TRC. The idea is there are stories to tell, and we will tell them irrespective of if you want us to, if you don't want us to. Because now as Alina rightly pointed out, the mic is ours. We literally built the stage. What else is going to stop us? So that is where my experience with the poetry scene coming into TRC and what TRC means for us.
So inspiring, really. No, you've given us such a great perspective and with so much humor that it really comes across. One of the things that it did set me thinking was on taste, the idea of taste itself, and how much of that is also sort of conditioning and cultural sort of yes manship, right? Because taste becomes something that is just kind of like the purview of a few, and then everybody else sort of assumes that that's where it lies. So that's a great conversation to have. I want to touch back on that. Alina has spoken about this as well before, about what passes as taste, what is tasteful, what is beautiful. And these intersections of even being a woman and how that sort of plays into this as well. We'll come to that in a minute, but I do want to ask Dr. Abhijit a few questions. And I know that, we've had conversations over many years around ideas of caste and identity and stage, both in poetry again and outside of it. Tell me about your thinking around stage and platforming and performance that led you to this on this journey and how you thought of putting this together.
Okay, I don't know where to start. I'll try. Going ahead, firstly, I would like to thank Nandini and NRI Affairs for having us here. This is officially the first, uh, like a live episode of TRC before we do the actual event. So thank you for giving us this space, and thank you that we can, express what we are doing, why we are doing. So thank you for that. And to all our listeners, I would also like to introduce our another fifth co-founder poet, Shripad Sinaka, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. Uh, but he is a force to reckon with, and he is a postgraduate in philosophy, and he is editor at Ambedkar Chronicle, amongst the other wonderful things he does. So going ahead, poetry. Poetry for me, since I sort of found out my father's old diary where he scribbles poems, and he's been scribbling poems, and then one day I just happened to walk onto this diary, and I never knew that my father is also a poet. you know Maybe if he could have had a platform, if his voice could have been heard, maybe if there was some sort of an exposure, he could have been a known poet like that. I mean, now that's another factor. What does knowing or not knowing or fame or infamy matter to a poet? But just to get your words out there is a very important thing, in the sense that for me, when I write something, and my desire to share it is with the intention that someone else out there probably is feeling the same thing, and but maybe is not finding the words for it and could take some sort of a refuge in what I write. So that is why I personally share poems, and that sense of commune, or the sense of sangha, as Buddha says. So even poetry, I now view it as a sort of a commune, and as much as a solitary act, but also an act for the community and of the community. Uh, as Daniel said, we've been thinking about this since the longest time, and also since we did an event back in 2018, I think, with when and Nandini is a part of the Rhyme Republic, the other poetry group that I'm a part of. We wanted to do a poetry event in Ambedkar University, Delhi, and I was trying to look out and find more poets from the Dalit Ambedkarite space. And since I was fairly aware, and with the Dali poetry circuit, if one may call it that, or the poets who were writing in that region, and I was so surprised that I could not find like more than like a couple of poets from the space. Anyway, we then tried harder. We found poets. We did the event. It was very well. But then that is when I mean, that thought crept into my mind. Like, why? Like, why is it like this? Like, why are there no poets out there? I cannot believe that there are no poets from these space that who aren't writing. But if there are, then why is there no visibility for them? Where are they? Why are they not being platformed? So that thought stayed with me. I stayed with that thought, and even now I shifted. I moved places. I moved to Gujarat. I moved to Mumbai. I am from Mumbai. I'm here now, and there's a lot that happens in the poetry scene, so to say, or the art scene. But I'm not happy with the kind of space or representation that poets from marginalized communities, especially Dalit Ambedkarite, Buddhist, SC/ST tribal poets get. Uh, and the thing is, It's not that they are not there. Yes, of course, you can come up with a couple of names. But then why do only those couple of names repeat everywhere? Why is there not any more thought on getting out more people, getting out more authentic voices out there? So that is why uh, I thought an attempt could be and should be made. And of course, it's not been an easy thing to do, and it's all a great learning experience. The way we doing things with the TRC and from everything, from the posters to the venue to the social media, everything. So that's why I felt that a platform like TRC was much needed, and I don't think we are doing anything, so to say, quote unquote, revolutionary here, but it's an attempt. And resistance or pockets of resistance, especially today, should be kept alive in whatever spaces, in all pockets, small pockets, as much as possible. So our idea here with the TRC is not to uh, get a fame or a visibility or anything like that, but the idea is to create a platform. And I think today the most powerful thing is a platform. You have a platform, that's when you get your voices heard, you get your points across, someone listens to you. So many people fake their platforms, or just so all sorts of things happen. So we wanted to create a platform for people from from our communities, who could come up and who could feel confident, because I cannot believe that even uh, it all basically just started from a singular thought for me. How many, Dalit Ambedkarite Buddhist poets are out there writing in English? That name did not go beyond five, not beyond five, or maybe like it did not run into double digits. Like even if we all of us we sat and we uh, we we like thought hard and we tried to come up with it, it was not going. So then, and the people that we have on TRC are some of the brilliant voices from the spaces that I personally knew. And I've seen them, followed their work, and I am familiar with their ethics. So then we reached out to one another, and that's how TRC came into being. So, yes, hopefully nothing will stop us going ahead. Maybe a few lawsuits if they happen, but we will see.
It's quite a journey, and what you say is like lived experience, right? Because also you have seen this across cities, and you have seen how some of the same mechanisms repeat over and over again. Alina, I wanted to speak with you about intersectionality. And as we have seen with Gaza right now, many of the Western feminists, for example, have terribly failed, as they speak so much about feminism, but somehow it only applies to situations that are non brown people related, right? I wonder what your thoughts are then about Savarna feminism in some cases, where poetry spaces, especially, seem to speak the language of feminism externally, the optics are there, but how much of it is truly, being able to take a back step and say, look, I don't need to be in the limelight. We speak about it in academic circles also, where a lot of academics are speaking about, caste issues, even in the diaspora. But again, what is the benefit going to the community? So would love your thoughts on that. And in particular with this, the reserve compartment, what do you think it would mean for a young woman, Dalit poet, to have this kind of platform that she could be a part of?
So the spaces, spaces are more often termed as progressive spaces or feminist spaces. So there is a certain kind of aesthetic that they allow within the feminism. That I feel this particularly when I go to women-centric spaces and feminist spaces. More often than not, they are very Savarna feminist coded. That people, to some degree, agree with feminist thoughts, like about people in these spaces particularly agree with feminist thoughts that women should work, women should be able to handle their own finances, menstruation is not impurity, uh, all these things people agree generally. But most of the time these basic tenets of feminism is savarna women centric. So all these problems I listed right now are more savarna women's problems, because regarding working outside, our women have been working outside for generations. Our women have been uh, taking care of their own finances for generations. And menstruation or whatnot, we've been working and taking care of the family even during menstruation and all these things. So everything is Savarna women coded. But I wish that Savarna women realize that their problems are like ours also comes from their own caste location, that Savarna women are their problems are also caste coded, they belong to that caste and they want to sustain that caste system, so their problems comes from this need to preserve the caste order. So that's the thing. But they think that their problems are universal and can be applied to everyone. That's when the problem happens, that they believe that their problems are the general women problem and our problems are just add on to that general women problem. So they think when they say about themselves, they speak about all women, and if I have a specific problem with my caste, I can add on to that. That's how all these things work. So I find it really limiting and short-sighted and peripheral, and it has been a lot of moments where I felt like really crushed down and disheartened by what I have been seeing in these progressive circles outside or the feminist spaces. And we've been talking and talking and talking about this stuff, and those people will find us as people who create problems, that oh, we are all women here, we are talking about feminism, we are doing feminism, then why do you have to accuse us of other stuff? There is this patriarchal world out there who is hunting both of us down, so why can't be like one entity and fight this? And that's the responses we get most of the time. But here in the reserved compartment, we are mindful of that. We are mindful of that distinction or that intersection when it comes to Dalit women. And we try to, include and platform more Dalit women. And our hosts and the opening act on all this stuff, we plan it very mindfully. And so we don't want to repeat the injustice that's going on in terms of
Yes.
convenience or whatnot. So this is actually a platform for me and for us to actually point out this distinction between what is intersectional feminism and what is mainstream feminism. And yeah, the double oppression that we talk about a lot. It's because even within the political circles and poetry circles, Dalit women will be a little bit more, oppressed. Like Dalit women are not even considered as women, or as in that way. Women, all the in this patriarchal idea that women should be protected, they should be provided for, they should be taken care of, but that doesn't apply to Dalit women. Dalit women are more disposable in the fringes of this idea of this patriarchal ideal. We are not ideal women. We are not the women patriarchy or the society in general wants to thrive. So these things are there, and I feel the reserve compartment is it's a space that we can explore those ideas, or we can point out those ideas more. Yeah, that's my experience within feminism and
I'm talking to each one of you, and I feel each one can be a whole episode, and each one can be a teach-in, because there's just so much to talk about on this. Like, Alina, what you're talking about, like, there are some problems that sit in the center, and your problems are fringe. And who has decided that which problems are central and which are fringe? are the people in the mainstream, right? So they have just decided. But these are all notions. These aren't based on fact. These are just notions that perpetuate. And it's such an interesting point. But I do want to also draw upon this idea of also maybe taking a little bit of a lens out. And Gautam, you've traveled now with your poetry to other countries, for instance, right? And you've seen how poetry or these spaces are cultivated and what kind of representation they provide. Are there any learnings that you've had in your journey that you would want to bring into the reserve compartment? Whatever lack that you have seen or whatever good things that you have seen, what are some of those ideas that you'd like to explore with the reserve compartment?
Okay, so first of all, when you go to the other countries, the minimum requirement is that you should have a linking language, and that is English most of the times. And I come from the background where English is not very handy. And when you speak English, even you just speak while speaking Gujarati, you just like put in some words like actually or something. People just look at you like you speak like actually something like that. So that elitism attached with English is so much here, and I did not get that opportunity, that privilege to study in English medium school. English medium of instruction was never English for me. And in the later stage of my life, I picked up the language and whatever I could. So right now in Gujarat, I'm the only Dalit writer writing in English. So whatever the little representation I can show through my poetry is this, that I do not have we do not have in Gujarat any English uh, Dalit poet who can take the issues of Gujarat, or take the issues of caste of Gujarat outside Gujarat, right? With language. So when I went to China, so it was again surprising. I did not think. I never. First of all, I never traveled much. So there is only two districts that I traveled most of the times, like Surendranagar, where I was born, and Gandhinagar, where I studied most of my studies, right? From 10th to my PhD. Since last 10 15 years, I studied here in Gandhinagar. So the distance between my district and my home and where I study is only 80 90 kilometers. So I just traveled that much, and it's always bus. So it was also that I never traveled in a train before, right? So only once or twice, very short journeys I traveled. And my first long traveling was in maglev train in China, from Hangzhou to Beijing. So again, all those experiences, right, that as a Dalit, when you come, like when you're from the desert area, very minimum facilities, no English education, nothing like that, and you picked up the language, you go in China and represent Indian poetry in English. And again, the very fascinating experience was that it was the International Youth Poetry Festival, and it was for the BRICS countries. And in its inauguration session, I was uh, chosen as a person, as a poet, who can inaugurate the session through my poetry. So most of the times what happens here, when I see in most of the literary festivals, that here in Gujarat especially, that you start with the deep pragatya, like lamp lighting and some prarthana or something very routine based, like most of the times we do. But there we had to uh, start our or inaugurate our session with poetry. So poets were there. So most of the times these platforms were hijacked by the politicians most of the times, or some businessman who comes and inaugurate session. But it was the poet who gave the space, and it was I never got such grand space before. And just to be in front of a lot of national and international audience, and to present my poetry was a surreal experience. And one of the biggest thing I could find is that we had to inaugurate after the poetry reading session. We had to inaugurate the session with there was a glass cube and hollow glass cube, and in that we had to pour water with dry carbon dioxide in it. When we the ice, carbon dioxide ice. So when we pour water, hot water, warm water on it, so it comes with a lot of clouds and things like that. So we all were given one jug of water, warm water, and we had to pour into it. And then all of us water will come out with a vapor or something like that. So the water as a symbol that we were never allowed to have. Villages in villages, the wells were totally prohibited. The ponds were totally prohibited. Water was since I come from that kind of desert area, it was very important symbol for me. And that or and then they do not allow us to have the idea of purity and impurity, the access to natural resources, water as a essential of life. And then to get the stage, and most of the times in India, inauguration is done by the pandits or somebody else, but a Dalit body which has always been considered as impure, and I had to inaugurate it for the first time. So that was quite an inclusive experience for me. And yeah, and that's what I can feel when I come back to Reserved Compartment, that and with the same vigor, with the same commitment, I recited my poem, my anti-caste poems there. And again, this is my home, Reserved Compartment, so I can go even more furious, even more vigorous in this sense. Yeah.
And when you're talking about this, we don't, this is what it is like, to hear lived experiences. Like, I would not even know what water would mean to you, right? What does it symbolize? What does it stand for? And what are the centuries of sort of segregation and oppression that are centered around something as basic as water, you know? And it's really humbling to realize that we can go on to many forums and talk, but we cannot replace the lived experience of people who've actually seen this and experienced it. And it's in your generational stories, it's in your ancestral stories, and those things come with their own weight, and they also come with their own opportunity to break the past and create opportunities for other people. And I just feel so wonderful listening to all of you talking about this